At the point when Will Smith's name springs up in the titles, it's typically connected with one more wreck or dramatization in his family anyway. This time Will himself let the cat out of the bag on his kindred VIPs, and sharing upsetting truth that a portion of the strong in the business need to keep profoundly covered up. The Oscar-winning entertainer mixed the mud with his new allegations against Quincy Jones. And you won't ever accept what he needs to share. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Celeb Live Station. So it appears as though Hollywood is plagued with filthy mysteries. And Will Smith is out in the open to share his piece about how unbelievable maker Quincy Jones changed his and rapper Tupac's private inclinations. Music. Except if you live under the stone, quite possibly as you are familiar titan of the business. Quincy Jones, the man has had a productive vocation that traverses 70 years and incorporates critical accomplishments, incorporating his work with rival craftsmen. And only for the reference, it was him who shared Michael Jackson's unequaled smash hit collection Spine Chiller. With the world, most would agree that Quincy has essentially consumed his time on Earth at the center of attention. Yet obviously, theirs was one thing he had never tended to, and that is his direction. The reports about the maker's cozy life and the details of his own mentorship. We're going this way. And that internet-based, it's been generally examined that Quincy capitalized on his leverage to compel male specialists into personal connections, promising them distinction and abundance. Consequently, the shameful idea of Quincy's mentorship goes crazy all around the virtual entertainment. And it appears as though many individuals accept that the popular maker was trapped with now expired rapper Tupac. You realize individuals saying wild stuff, man. Like Quincy Jones, he came on the troupe, he offered Tupac such and such. So while Tupac hasn't arrived to impart his side of the story to us, Will Smith approached as one more survivor of Quincy's purported mentorship, or folks it appears, as though there's an enormous value that craftsmen need to pay to become renowned. As Will Smith proposes, him and Tupac were not by any means the only two casualties of Quincy and the popular maker has had defiled the little army of youthful gifts. All through the years, Will Jones had a ton of impact in the Broadway, and working with him was a distinction for each individual, so they needed to conform to the conditions of his association with Quincy. And as he personally once said, expressing no to him was somewhat dumb, not being ready for an extraordinary open door. Definitely some will be prepared for anything that comes right well. It was affirmed later by Keisha Cole that Tupac for sure had plans to work with Quincy Jones Mark just before his sad destruction. Like the rapper and the maker came to the provisions of their association around then, Keisha was just 15, and her companion Tupac was requesting that she leave Suge Knight Death Row record for her own security and come to work with him under Quincy, presumably realizing that Jones cared very little about young ladies, and she would be liberated from this large number of unique terms of mentorship. As Keisha said, he needed to sign me to Quincy Care Jones when he was with Kurita, Quincy's girl, and he planned to leave Death Row and go to sign with Quincy. He believed me should go around there, since he said that Death Row was not the spot for youngsters, as Tupac referenced in his beforehand concealed interview. He realized he was making the best choice when he consented to work with Quincy. And in spite of the wild terms that Maker had for his young abilities, the rapper was firm in his decision. I trust that your karma in all that you do terrible returns to so. Anything that I'm doing that is awful, I could need to languish over yet in my heart. I think what I'm doing is correct in keeping in mind that it's exceedingly difficult to hear Tupac's side of the story well. Since he is no longer with us, it appears as though Quincy's grimy mysteries are presently not protected with him on the grounds that while Smith has his portion of stories connected with his relationship with the amazing maker, and the reports about Whip influencing the two different ways had showed up simultaneously as he rose to the notoriety in Hollywood. Will's Close has gotten the focal point of an embarrassment in 2020 when Trisha Paytas blamed him for laying down with her male artists without their assent, despite the fact that Trisha's resentment was for the most part coordinated at Jada Will's significant other. She likewise guaranteed that the entertainer had constrained a portion of her male artists into personal intercourse, expressing what about stress over your girl being sleeping at 13 with her 20-year former sweetheart. What about stress over your friggin' deceiving spouse resting one of my male artists? When they would have rather not yet. Evidently, to many fans it wasn't like something stunning in light of the fact that he's a known guardian in the business, and most likely follows the strides of his maestro Quincy Jones. Individuals are shut-leaning yet. When you become a grown-up, they feel like not very many individuals will truly give you trouble for it. Like it, the discussion about Will Smith being closeted and not sharing every bit of relevant information about his inclinations started coursing via online entertainment with uncommon power, with many individuals expressing that there's no disgrace in conceding reality, except if there's something more. Evil is continuing and will truly powers others to lay down with him like he was constrained by Quincy himself. As one individual remarked how inhabited not realize Will was by dudaks very laddie-like. And we as a whole skill Hollywood is yet you all didn't have no damn hint wow on the off chance that it smells like smoke. My supposition is someplace there's a fire. And one more client added, Will Smith was in debt with such a lot of cash during the 90s. Quincy Jones received him out consequently. He became his sweetheart. Well, there's no requirement for search profound for the proof. And it seems like individuals exposed the entertainer before he got the opportunity himself, since the hypotheses about the Smiths' insane individual life have been the focal point of conversation for a surprisingly long time. Jada had at last affirmed that their relational peculiarities was straying from the acknowledged standards in the public eye, and what made considerable progress to recognize who he truly was, stalling a portion of the build that he's worked around himself of what his identity is, and who he's not great on the off chance that these two like to experience the manner in which they pick. There's no judgment, Jada, and Will's marriage doesn't fit numerous guidelines of an exemplary joining between a man and a lady, particularly considering the wild tales that are cheating and charges about open relationship, where both Will and Jada lay down with others, while remaining wedded to one another in a way that would sound natural to Jada. You got trust who you're with, and by the day's end haven't arrived to be anyone's watcher. I'm not his watcher, he's a developed man. I believe that the man that Will is an honest man. He has all the opportunity on the planet, and insofar as Will can take a gander at himself in the mirror and be okay, I'm great. And keeping in mind that Jada didn't straightforwardly respond to the inquiries concerning whether her significant other is laying down with men, it seems like this couple had an arrangement, and she is obliged to maintain this mystery until the second will open up himself, knowing how Jada loves the consideration. It seems like she is anxious to share more about her significant other's private life, yet she regards his desires and doesn't out him without his consent anyway. Nothing remains to be covered up. Thinking about that, other celeb networks are open about Will's cozy life, and it doesn't appear to be a very remarkable mystery in the business trying to say that Will Smith is sexually unbiased, and that they do this various things and the other thing. Well, Will's raise to acclaim can be truly connected with Quincy Jones, in light of the fact that the now mogul entertainer had once admitted that Quincy fundamentally saved him from destitution in those days, when Smith wasn't washing in offers from popular chiefs. He was in monetary entire following duty issues. And as the entertainer said, Quincy Jones had welcomed him to a party at his home that additionally highlighted Steven Spielberg. And I mean, how might you say, no better believe it, to need to relinquish the fantasy was obliterating. Smith admitted that he was hesitant to do the tryout right at the party and asked Jones for 7 days to get ready. Yet Isermas about that time Will didn't actually have the foggiest idea what sort of tryout he needed to go through. As Will reviews the renowned maker's words, Quincy requested the tryout to occur not too far off, and afterward, hold up, I'm not prepared to do no tryout. And he said, gracious og, how well everything that you really want, say to me what you want. And in the event that you don't have the foggiest idea about this trail, was for the job in The New Ruler of Bel-Air, the sitcom that would send off Smith's acting profession on the grounds that up until that point, he was known as a rapper clearly. This is where that's what Smith understood to become showbiz royalty in life. He needed to agree with the principles of the strong in the business until he becomes one of them and can do anything he desires, so the lesson of the story is consistently express yes, regardless of the upsetting things the entertainer needed to go through, it appears, as though he's partaking in his ebb and flow life. Since Willis himself is currently in the key, influential place where he can do a ton of obscure stuff in the background, yet as many individuals say the snapshot of his openness will come to, and similarly, as he uncovers Quincy's insider facts his own dim deeds, we be out in the open one method of one more, as one individual remarked. He ought to have resided in his reality, open life. Since while he's concealing in the shadows, doing dreadful things with different men, that is truly frightening, and another client added, I won't ever observe any film interview or anything that has to do with Will Smith or his debilitated family well. It seems like Will Smith is oak to carry on reasonably of the business, and presumably it's his go now to raise one more age of agreeable. And what do you figure celebs? And what do you figure is this ballad about Quincy Jones offering distinction in return for specific blessings? And was Will compelled to offer a few upsetting courtesies to Quincy to share your contemplations in the remarks underneath? I'm anxious to understand what you're thinking. And meanwhile, check my different recordings about Hollywood messy privileged insights. Nothing stays.